So this is something to consider about the times. I don't want you to just, I want, when you look at the Stalin history, and like I say, I only have an hour, we're not going to get into all of it. This is the question I want you to have in your mind. In that context, was there a better solution to defend yourself as a person, as a nation? Was there a better solution than Stalin? It's easy. I can tell you I'm a Stalinist, and I will tell you those were horrible times. No Stalinist is going to deny that to this current day. Those were horrible times. The question is, when you are in horrible times, what is what is the best of all possible solutions to your predicament? And in this, we find that Stalin still stands out. Now, the Battle of Stalingrad, by the way, 500,000, just in that battle alone, 500,000 Russians died. Okay, that's the largest single battle in history. And I want to pass around the map because I know that a lot of this World War II history is being lost completely in people's minds, but it's still kind of seeping out. We're still, people who were keeping quiet during the war and the aftermath because of the Cold War are now starting to write books, and we're starting to see some things that are continue to vindicate Stalin. I'm going to pass around this map in case you don't know how far Hitler and the Nazis got into the Soviet Union. This map here shows, like I was saying before, Germany kind of in the center of Europe, and they marched through Poland and Czechoslovakia, through the so-called Balkan countries that we hear about today, and penetrated into the Soviet Union. And you're going to see from this map how far he got, because I'm going to tell you, he got all the way over here to the east, to Stalingrad. That's the big battle where it finally turned around. Hitler marched all the way through Europe, all the way through Eastern Europe, all the way up to Stalingrad. All right? And so this is the map. Take a look at it. If you're not aware of how far Hitler got, this is something you need to know. You need to understand. You need to understand the times Hitler was popular. He had support of government figures, not just in Germany, not just in Austria, which joined up with Germany. But you may have heard of this term Quisling. Well, this comes from traitors, we call them now, but they were actually government officials in the case of Norway, also in Finland, who became Nazis. They overthrew their existing governments because they liked this Nazi idea and they wanted to join up. So when 3 million troops invaded the Soviet Union in 1941, let me read you who it was. It wasn't just Germans. Okay, there were 79 German divisions. This is a quote from Bruce Franklin, by the way. He's an English professor. He's one of those professors, by the way, who in this great United States has been fired from his job for political reasons. I won't get into that. But he explains it here. There were 79 German divisions, okay, that we expect, marching into the Soviet Union. But there were 22 Romanian divisions. There was a civil war in Romania in which the Nazis won. The Nazi pro-fascist side won. 14 Finnish divisions, 13 Hungarian divisions, 10 Italian. We knew about the Italians. 10 Italian divisions. 1 Slovak division, 1 Spanish division. We knew about that there was a split in Spain. A total of well over 3 million troops, the best armed and most experienced in the world, attacked along a 2,000-mile front. So I'm telling you, Hitler, fascism, Nazism, these ideas were, we have to understand, they were popular at the time. They were exterminated by history. But don't think it was easy. That's the thing. They were widely popular at the time. They were so popular that in France, remember now, France was the tough guy in Europe in World War I, where they had the trench warfare and they duked it out for a few square yards of turf and millions would die over it, just, the mud basically. If you moved the lines forward a few yards, moving back would cost you tens of thousands of lives. France was tough. In World War II, France collapsed in 6 weeks. Why? Because the French people were in confusion. They had poor leadership. They were part of a capitalist country that had no resistance to fascism as an ideology. They had no organized resistance. They didn't have purges. They didn't crush their dissidents that were pro. In fact, now it's coming out in 1994. There was a book published finally that Mitterrand, the president of France, up until 1994, I'm talking about somebody you were alive to be contemporary of. The president of France, turns out and this is published in the Boston Globe now as well. You can check it out. The references are on our website. He was a bootlicking officer. He was not only a member of a fascist party when he was 19. Okay, 19-year-olds make mistakes. But he continued. He was an assistant to the leader of the so-called Vichy government of France, which was the Nazis' puppet government in France. And not only did he serve as an assistant and win awards as such during World War II, but he continued, after World War II was over and the Germans had lost, he continued to lay flowers on the grave of the leaders of the Vichy government. And this is all documented. This is in a large book. So some of these people, and there's also the same situation in Italy. And the Cold War is over. The Cold War was not over. Some of these things you still wouldn't be learning. For instance, the Italian government also, at the very top levels, into the 1990s, was staffed by people who were former fascists. Yeah, and they had in their coalitions people who were former fascists. Now, why did that happen? Well, the Cold War, it takes some explanation, but basically the United States sided with anybody in Europe who was against the Soviet Union. That included the former Nazis. Okay, so that stuff's starting to creep out, but I want to come back to my original point. My original point was that at the time, you have to remember, in the 30s and 40s, fascism was popular in Europe. Okay, it took 27 million Russian lives to exterminate, to make this idea unpopular, so that some of us don't even know what it is, right? I'm sure. But at the time, it was very popular, and to get to how Russia went from being the wimp of Europe to being able to beat the Germans pretty much single-handedly has to do with industrialization, has to do with Stalin, has to do with Marxism, and that's Stalin's accomplishment. Now, I want to come back to that's it I'm going to say about accomplishments. That took me a lot longer than I thought. The one drawback, I can boil it down to one sentence, is that he had an inadequate concept of class struggle. Now, what does that mean? It means he was purging, and this is admitted by his second or third in command after Stalin died. He was purging, he was killing off his enemies through this whole time, not so much around 1924, not in the 1920s. Things were fairly easygoing then. But in the 30s and the 40s, especially in the 30s, he was killing off his internal enemies, and they kept reappearing. Now, the problem with Stalin's idea about this, as summed up by Bukharin, we have to give Bukharin credit on this one point. Now I'm going to point to this guy. That's how you spell his name. Bukharin was wrong about most things in our opinion, but this one thing he got right. He said that, according to Stalin's strange conception of class struggle, the class struggle intensifies the further socialism goes along. And, in fact, it intensifies and becomes more violent, just as the bourgeoisie is wiped out. Because according to Stalin, there's no longer an internal class. There is no bourgeoisie. There are no landlords anymore. So this was Stalin's conception that they have socialism now. There is no landlord class. There is no bourgeoisie anymore. Yet, all these people still had to be killed. He was finding all these enemies. So something was, something's not together. And later Mao put this together and he said, no, there is an internal enemy that continues to exist even under socialism. This is an argument we can have later. And the bourgeoisie, the new exploiter class, arises right in the Communist Party itself because it has access to the means of production. Okay, so this is, when it comes to Stalin, he would keep killing people off who were enemies, and in the main, we think he did hit the right people. Now that's controversial, deservedly so. But he didn't have any idea how to keep the enemies from arising in the first place. This was more Mao's idea in the Cultural Revolution, was what things you have to do under socialism and economic organization to prevent a bourgeoisie from arising in the first place in the party, to whatever extent you can.